The Unsure Male. A Study of the Human Male. By Roy T. James. Let me begin with a few very common questions that deserves to be asked, the most likely answer, and a pertinent question that results, each time. Why is male always in a hurry? To evolve faster to the next species. Why evolve? Why is male chauvinistic? As a preemptive strike. Against what? Why is male constantly at work? To avoid going home. Why avoid? Preface. Years back, I used to be working in airfields. You see, these are located well away from populated areas. One such airfield, a newly built one, was situated in what was once an idyllic and somewhat sleepy village, and I was residing in a first-floor apartment. Both the airfield and our place of stay were surrounded by vast areas of virgin fields thick with vegetation. At home, I usually could savor my wife's chatter, peeping into the wet, marshy meadows beneath, while busy in the kitchen. Mostly, "Froggy, Froggy, a snake behind you, scoot often, oh. Stupid frog," I am yelling, "jump away, jump." Still, it gets caught, and a little less often, "Smart froggy, it listened to me." Sometimes, she takes to pontificating. I think many of the frogs are foolish. Once in a blue moon, a few among them listen to me and jump away in time. I wanted to see for myself the basis on which she classifies frogs into foolish or smart, and started observing them closely. And she happened to be right. I could tell between two types of frogs: ones, the smart ones, which took actions to catch prey as well as to escape from danger well in time, and the others, which were always late and sluggish. Motivated by frogs, I ventured into lizards, one of the most common creatures to populate our buildings. Here, I could clearly differentiate between two types of lizards. One, which shoots its tongue out at the most opportune moment and the prey is always caught. Two, which is always lethargic, prey managing to escape most of the times. I felt encouraged to continue. Quite similar was my experience with the next creature also. I could find two types of cockroaches, those which run towards you when you enter a room and the other that smartly run away to the safety of a dark crevice. I could see that this particular phenomenon is mentioned in many places. Everywhere, this peculiarity was attributed to the tendency of the cockroaches to get under the somewhat dark area created by one's shadow. For taking this into account, I watched these creatures with the light source positioned at different places, thereby altering the orientation of the shadow. I could not observe any change, there was no shadow effect. I was struck with such a remarkable variation in nature, which has not been discussed so far, in the character and living habits of all things male and female. I wanted to go a little deeper, and I tried to look for further information. But all I got was a few unremarkable responses. Wherever I searched looking for an explanation or a reference, be it scientific journals, books, or reputed websites, almost all answers pointed to the same refrain: evolutionary differences. It seems, all these are part of the natural adaptation of traits that facilitate survival and reproduction. Put briefly, all of those say, if you accept that brains as well as bodies evolved, you will have to agree that gender-related characteristics too, encompassing all other differences, evolved in both. In other words, whenever a difference is observed between reactions from the male and those from the female, it should be considered as a normal, gender-specific response. If reactions of male and female to the same trigger are not different, there is something to worry, as suggested by many of those books. I could not find these answers sufficient enough, being still of the old school that would be comfortable only when a reason was found. The age-old view that nothing happens without a cause, and for those with life, without a want, took the better of me. The want might be the result of one's instincts, intuition, reasoning, or of any other external or internal stimuli. But without it, nothing should occur with a living being. Therefore, I asked myself, what is giving all the creatures a want to react the way they reacted? Or, as most of the literature attributes the observed peculiarity of reactions to evolution, how does life get a want to evolve? I could not find the cause or want mentioned in literature. It corresponds to the unexplored regions of evolution, which points to a need to go back to the sequence of events that take part in the progressive development of a species of life, to learn more about it. And I wanted to get more information regarding the origins of evolution itself. Thereby learn more about the purpose, composition, and function of evolutionary differences, the celebrated protagonist of this enigma. The rest of the story is about that search, which quite unexpectedly has opened up whatever mystery life was hiding within. Now I am as much clear about the abstract, as I am of real things. Much of the imponderables, many of those keeping behavioral analysts and social scientists perpetually busy, can no more pose me a challenge. One can find inside this, for example, plenty of explanations and cure for well-reputed intangibles like extremism, chauvinism, or fanaticism. And, all other forms of intolerance too shall fail to pose any baffling questions, after reading this book. And it was also a great loss to me, after completing the book, I couldn't wonder any more at nature as a collection of hidden secrets. Chapter 1. The background. There is now a need to revisit evolution and study deeply the manifestation of different elements that take part in the trouble-free progression of life. What we need to look for is a promoting agent. Let us try to simplify matters a little. Look for undocumented and unobserved peculiarities in the character and living habits of all forms of life. For, it is clear, if we assume that all known, different facets of life and evolution have been satisfactorily explained, a detailed study of undocumented elements is quite likely to lead us to our destination. In short, let us once again study life, right from its beginning, the very start of evolution. And let us look for a sign showing a want to evolve. So far, nobody would have felt the need to look for a starting point for evolution, since evolution has been seen only as a natural process with no specific cause. It is considered as an event set in motion and promoted, more or less solely by environmental factors. I have come across many arguments in favor of such a view. I think these are all quite flimsy, like the logical reason behind the long neck of giraffes, that these animals like to eat leaves of tall trees. This evidently is not a worthy reason. It is more natural to conclude that because of long necks, these animals found it easier to survive on the leaves of tall trees. In short, giving the prime position to environmental factors is plainly counterintuitive. You see, something can happen only when it is initiated. Even if we agree with all exponents of the origin of life, who maintain that evolution can be initiated without a specific spark, there is only one possibility for the unhindered continuation of life. Every living being, showing at all times, a specific desire to evolve. This and many other features exist, in each individual being's unique, unconscious, and repetitive way of responding to, or avoiding, the main tasks of living. Another interesting fact is that this is true for all forms of life. Further investigation has become a necessity now. More so, since quite a few of these features do not find a mention at all, in the books and papers related to this topic. As most of these are linked with the progression of life itself, it is only proper, if we begin our study by asking a rather fundamental question in this regard. What is the root cause of evolution? Why should beings evolve? What is in vogue is to answer such questions, pointing to environmental changes which in turn promote genetic changes. Ever since the publication of On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, or The Preservation of Favored Races in the Struggle for Life by Charles Robert Darwin, many studies have gone into the mechanism of evolution. His theory still holds, successfully facing the many challenges posed mostly in connection with the finer details of its materialization. Of course, the alterations and additions contributed by scientists such as Gregor Mendel, De Vries, Haldane, Dobbs-Hansky, Futema and several others standing in good stead. Almost all such studies can be seen to be focusing on the minor changes within a species from generation to generation over long periods of time. And also, how these minor changes result in the gradual transition of the species to a new one. However, not much has been written about its causes. What is motivating such a change? Why shouldn't there be any opposition to evolution? For example, motion can begin only by fighting against inertia, and to continue, it has to subdue friction. Conceding that the question as to how life evolved is explained more or less satisfactorily by all these theories, why it evolved in the manner it did, does not seem to have attracted much attention. The motive for evolution remains an unsolved puzzle, that too with no attempts of resolution in sight. Henri Bergson, the French philosopher, was very critical about Darwinism. According to him, Darwinism failed to explain why life evolved in the direction of greater and greater complexity. He then proposed the existence of la vital, a kind of vital impetus which explains evolution in a less mechanical and more lively manner, as well as accounting for the creative impulse of mankind. This substance, la vital, according to him, is the thing responsible for growth, change, and necessary or desirable adaptations. Sanskrit prana and Chinese qi also refers to something of similar function. This is what is driving animal life to take the path of improvement. He named this journey as self-evolution and was awarded the Nobel Prize, 1927 Prize for Literature in recognition of his rich and vitalizing ideas and the brilliant skill with which they have been presented, for his work. Put briefly, contrary to the popular belief that those who try to develop themselves spiritually are primarily aiming for self-preservation, self-improvement, and self-growth, they are in fact working on behalf of evolution itself. Now let us examine why life evolved in the direction of increasing complexity. Bergson's theory suggests that the enhanced complexity is due to the creative path life has chosen. A couple of questions arise here. What prompted life to choose such a path? Conceding that animal life is driven to a path of constant improvement, what is getting better? Also, as his theory posits, the important thing about self-evolution is that it is a conscious attempt at the process of evolution. As it happens with any other instance of conscious effort, shouldn't there be something inspiring, provoking, or inducing this? Especially when we find in nature, inducements existing aplenty for making every form of life, plant or animal, behave the way nature wants it to behave. In a more recent review of this question, Richard Dawkins, through his book The Selfish Gene, has put forward a gene-centered view of evolution. According to this view, emphasis should be on the propensity of the genes to survive. That is, life first began from a replicator that could make approximate copies of itself, and those replicators, genes, which happened to install themselves on machines that helped them copy better would reproduce more. Bodies are just gigantic lumbering robots performing their role as survival machines of genes. If so, what could be motivating such a machine to help one gene more appropriately than another one in copying itself? For we can see, some people, that is life with certain attributes, perpetuate more readily than another. Also, life having certain attributes shall continue its presence for a long time while others fade away. Also, what factor or factors shall be of consequence in leading some forms of life to extinction? We have already collected a good bunch of questions, all of those pointing to the inadequacy of the theories extant on evolution. If we peep further into the vast riches of this branch of knowledge, evidently, much more are likely. Therefore we need to review the many aspects of trouble-free progression of life, to collate all possible queries. Let us look at evolution from the very beginning, paying close attention to the less explored areas. Chapter 2. The disorder. The modern theory of evolution in its most widely accepted form lists down the following, as the principal features affecting evolution. I. Mutation, of sex cells. 2. Natural selection. 3. Limited size of the population. 4. Partial breeding. V. Non-random mating. 6. Difference in the number of offspring. 7. Migration. These constitute the context and environment that are of significance, as far as the smooth conduct of evolution is concerned. As far as animal life is concerned, what embellishments has nature instituted, to facilitate all, or any, of these key conditions, other than random variations in one's preference? Of course, during the mating season, many natural additions intended for attracting one's mate, can be seen widely among animals. Concede, these can be considered as appealing and attractive enough to bring both the male and the female close enough to one another. But, is it enough to ensure a guaranteed continuation of the species? Expedients like tasty fruits, fragrant and pretty flowers, appropriate degrees of lightness, hardness, and other attributes of seeds, to name a few, can be found extensively in the plant kingdom. It can be easily seen that these are specially instituted to pave the way for better pollination, assured seed dispersal, and other features to ensure fail-safe reproduction. Does it need intellect any greater than mere common sense to reason that Mother Nature, who has made such elaborate arrangements for the flora, wouldn't have forgotten to establish an analogous measure for fauna too? In the case of humans, it is clear that all the superfluity men and women choose in adorning themselves, be in the form of makeup, fragrance, ornaments, dress or other accompaniments, are intended to work as expedients similar to the natural ones seen among other forms of life. Also, all these and other abstract elements of the male-female union, like mood or occasion, are nothing but matters of individual choice. One interesting question arises in this regard. Why has nature left almost all the important facilitators of this particular union to the vagaries of individual choice, especially when the very consummation of the union is the most crucial and irreplaceable part of the continuation of species? Should someone's careless act, like choosing inappropriate makeup or unpleasant fragrance, say, under duress, in jest, on intoxicant or by sheer ignorance, adversely affect evolution? Would nature overlook such a serious threat to the uninterrupted flow of life without having a reliable backup? It is an acknowledged fact that exchange of male-female gamete is the most significant part of the union between the two sexes, as far as the duty of perpetuating the species go. Therefore, it should be a matter of great concern that such an exchange takes place during each and every instance of the male-female union, whether participants of such a union asks for it or not. However, the available literature or studies into human physiology does not show any system or part of our anatomy specifically meant for ensuring this. Our understanding of life can never be complete, unless we identify the measures nature has adopted to achieve this end, that too without any additional part or other complexity. How does nature ensure such an exchange taking place in instances of male-female union, that too without fail, always and every time? Having seen the admirable approach nature has evinced in perpetuating plant life, isn't it a matter of great surprise that the continuation of life, as far as other living species go, is left in the hands of entities of such precarious nature like apprehension, insobriety, or free will? Some artifice should definitely be in existence with the wherewithal to facilitate the seamless continuation of species, similar to the expedients seen among plants. What is missing is that no one has felt it necessary to look for an incentive for evolving. Is it that overawed by the amazing intricacy already witnessed in the matters related to flora, one more addition to the existing complexity of life was not apparent enough? Let us assume that nature did not forget fauna, and a suitable incentive is already in existence for each and every form of life. To identify that incentive, let us try to analyze the gains that did happen to each and every species of life when compared with its immediate predecessors, as a result of evolution. A few questions now arise that are of great significance. Could evolution alleviate any difficulty? If so, what are the parameters of life that were altered in this moderation process? Also, what was the handicap that was provided with relief? If we are able to locate a befitting answer, we can probably consider it as the incentive we are looking for. Towards this, a quick way of getting a result shall be to observe male and female of each species closely, with the idea of identifying properties or peculiarities that all species of life would like to change for the better. If we are able to find a distinctive feature of life, about which all species of living beings express a noticeably high degree of discontent, that feature can very well be considered as a serious challenger for this. This particular factor, the feature they are most uneasy with, could be the disorder, the one promoting evolution. In simple terms, whatever was causing the greatest discomfort in one's life. And, beings evolved to get rid of this discomfort. To find the promoting factor, the entity causing the greatest discomfort, let us look at evolution as a solution, rather than seen as one of the inevitable, natural processes, like deforestation, flooding or aging. A solution that points to a much larger, universal disease that can even be assigned a meaningful name, omnipresent disorder. A form of disease present in all forms of life that causes them to evolve, to escape from some common, unknown misery. Let us say beings evolve, as a cure for the omnipresent disorder. In the following pages, efforts can be seen to identify a factor that can act as an incentive to, or control, reproduction. This factor, which can hasten the manifestation of the conditions necessary for procreation, can rightfully be taken as the omnipresent disorder. Also, this very cause can very well take the place of the expedient, similar to the natural promoters of seamless propagation of species found in plants, as far as the animal kingdom go. Also, an important feature of animal life can help us in this regard. Remember, living beings like animals will react to a signal only if it wants to, unlike objects like plants, which react to each and every stimulus. Therefore, we can make our search simpler, by asking a basic question: what want of a living being is satisfied by evolving? With this thought, let us examine animal life, especially the specific features of male and female that could be of significance in guaranteeing the seamless continuation of species. Chapter 3. The symptoms. If we name evolution as a disorder, naturally one will expect identifiable symptoms. Let us look therefore at the most obvious places, which, of course, is the main actors, male and female of every species. There is thus a need to examine them with the intent of finding their uncomfortable zones, especially, of areas that have not been studied well. As evolution undoubtedly originates from a combined move, it is more likely that such uncomfortable zones will be found in transactions where both the sides take part simultaneously. A casual observation of the living style of all forms of life is sufficient to show that the male has a lingering discomfort. Females are oriented differently, and are comfortable everywhere, as we shall see soon. If we take a man, it is not difficult to see that he accomplishes any task he does, taking as much time and effort as possible. He can generally be seen wasting a lot of time, on activities not at all connected with the task at hand. And he always shows utmost dedication to these secondary issues, as if these distractions are the ones deserving primary attention. He behaves as though such subsidiary activities are necessary to delay something that is going to take place the moment he is free from all jobs. In short, for all tasks and responsibilities, truly, the male is unprofessional. In fact, the huge demand for the occupation of supervision or monitoring as a standard part of our work environment is a silent admission of this. Supervision can very well take the place of a distraction. Also, supervision wasn't effective can take the place of a widely accepted excuse for the man to explain his continued involvement with other distractions with impunity if the need arises to give a good reason for any loss of creativity or output. The unprofessional nature of the male gender should be seen alongside the highly professional outlook the female always exhibit. This, the appearance of the female that always exudes self-confidence, happens to be an easily noticeable peculiarity if one is to put the differences between the male and female persona into some scrutiny. Plenty of examples of this could be easily spotted among the events and happenings of everyday life along with many other behavioral quirks. The other behavioral quirks perhaps is much more appealing to us that we have been allowing it to garner our attention in full, overlooking such an obvious and fundamental thing as the difference between male and female, while covering gender difference. Moreover, both in scientific inquiry and literary imagination, we have been using all these other quirks quite extensively. As a result, no room is left vacant for any new topic. It is as though we are making a conscious effort to prevent any fresh topic from coming in. Is it because of an inborn fear in us that as clear a topic as professionalism and its dependency on gender might squeeze in and shatter the idea of male supremacy? As the first example of the unparalleled professionalism of the female sex, let us compare the academic performance of male and female students. Female students, in giving undivided attention to lessons as well as in preparing for the ensuing examinations are always able to do much better than the male ones. This can be established rather easily if one is to go through the final results or rank list of any examination where candidates of both genders take part. There is hardly any, where female students haven't shown a result better than that of the male ones. That girls outperform boys in school is a known fact. And it has been subjected to many a study with most of them agreeing with the gist of the following. Girls are more likely to say they like school, they are mature enough even at this age, while many boys are not, and they realize that good grades are important to them. And their motivation translates into efforts. Girls are more likely than boys to spend time studying. Success in academics, like success in sports, requires a big investment of time and effort. The more you practice, the better you become. As the second example, let us examine how much of truth is there in the popular belief that girls do worse than boys in mathematics and allied subjects. A report published in Journal of Economic Perspectives, Spring 2010, presents an analysis of the reasons for lower scores for female students in many such tests when compared with the male ones. The report states that a series of studies have shown that males and females differ in their response to competition and that these differences in approach may cause test scores to magnify and potentially distort the underlying gender differences in actual ability and skills. In light of the role played by beliefs on relative performance, and women's sensitivity to compete against men, these factors may be particularly important when assessing math skills to confirm the above conclusion. When Natalie Angier and Kenneth Chong reviewed such differences in the New York Times also, the inference wasn't far removed from this. They found there is no difference in math aptitude before age 7. Starting in adolescence, some differences, boys score approximately 30 to 35 points higher than girls on the math portion of the SAT, appear. But, scores on different subcategories of math vary tremendously, often with girls outperforming boys consistently. This in fact seriously questions the popular belief that girls do not outperform boys in mathematics and allied subjects. In a study titled The Sex Differences in Neural Efficiency, Are They Due to the Stereotype Threat Effect? By Beat Dunst, boys and girls of varying intellectual ability were tested with a mental rotation task, either under a stereotype exposure or a no stereotype exposure condition while measuring their EEG. The behavioral results have shown that an activated negative stereotype does not necessarily hamper the performance of girls. The report goes on to say our results provide preliminary evidence that the stereotype threat itself cannot explain sex differences in neural efficiency in visuospatial tasks. The results corroborate the neural efficiency hypothesis for men only when sex differences were described to be irrelevant. And this suggests that visuospatial sex differences in brain activation patterns may be caused by biological but also by long-term social factors like learned or socially determined interests and not only short-lived stressing effects of stereotype threat on performance. Here also the significant admission that stereotypes triggered during the tests affected brain activation differently for boys and girls, could be seen along with its correction. The introduction of stereotype threat is an important phenomenon to consider in forthcoming studies. EuropePMC.org/articles/PMC3759843 right parenthesis. While discussing gender-based differences and its effect on the achievement gap between men and women, American Psychological Association, www.apa.org, mentions that negative stereotypes raise inhibiting doubts and high-pressure anxieties in a test-taker's mind. And it is those anxieties that give birth to the phenomenon of stereotype threat. As for verbal ability, they continue, data from many studies revealed that the perceived female superiority is so slight as to be meaningless, despite previous assertions that girls are better verbally. What's more, the authors found no evidence of substantial gender differences in any component of verbal processing. There were even no changes with age. Also, as countless reviews mention, when women perform math, unlike men, they risk being judged by the negative stereotype that women have weaker math ability. We can term that as a predicament stereotype threat and hypothesize that the apprehension it causes may disrupt women's math performance, leading to lower scores for girls. In the light of all these, the popular belief that girls do worse than boys in mathematics-oriented subjects while producing superior performance in verbal transactions can be considered as an axiom, at best, as one yet to be proved conclusively. To continue our discussion on to species other than the human, in our search for the professional among those belonging to feminine gender, see the description of man-eaters of Kumon Valley by Colonel Jim Corbett. In this book, he presents a vivid picture of the wild tiger population of Kumon Hills in India, while describing in detail the man-eating ones. He puts the average number of human victims of each tiger before it could be silenced, shot, Col Corbett being the premier hunter, as comparable figures, but the total number of victims in the case of a tigress well exceeded that of any of the tigers by many multiples, though both of them had been active as man-eaters for similar periods of time. In short, for the predatory animals, the more taxing and the more dangerous of the jobs are always in the female's domain. For example, among lions, the lioness, which is lighter and more agile, does the hunting for the pride. Male lions are generally busy defending their territory and guards cubs during the hunt. Though the male ones always step in, it is only to enjoy the spoils of victory. Or among cats, the female ones are known to be better at hunting mice, while only male cats that are fixed or have a mate are good at hunting. Or among ants, all the workers are females and they care for the queen and her young. Worker ants build and repair the nest. They search for food and fight off enemies. The only job of the male ones is to mate with the queen. If this is not a silent admission that mating, for the male, is as tiring as all the other jobs combined, what is it? Also in another study into the effects of sex, etc. on the anti-predator tactics in free-ranging garter snakes published in the Oxford Journal on Behavioral Ecology, Volume 11, Issue 3 pp 239-245, it has been shown that female snakes engaged in a higher proportion of aggressive displays than did the males. The sex difference can be clearly noticed in the fact that a high proportion of males fled from the observer, whereas fewer females adopted this tactic. Those that did not flee took to remaining still, to flatten, or to flatten and strike, all defensive techniques best suited for the use of energy to the optimum. An analysis of the escape behavior in males and females of certain types of lizards also, seen in another issue of the same journal, discusses such peculiarities. In the case of Anolis species of lizard, females and males show different patterns of fleeing from danger. The females select rather nearby areas and the males choose safe and faraway places to hide. They, smarter, females make them less conspicuous as they quickly flee over shorter distances, whereas the male is forced to remain more easily spotted as it has to start fleeing well in time to cover longer distances, and also to compensate for its slow speed. This will result in the male exposing its location more often while supplementing energy or food gathering. Females, though may not be able to hide in thorough safety, are not as vulnerable as the male counterparts, thanks to the quick and smart moves. It is clear. The female's approach is considerably superior to that of the male. 4. They show great talent in addressing effectively the most serious questions of life. Like the judicious use of energy resources, or the lifestyle that is best for longevity. What can be a better proof of this, other than the actual lifespan? Isn't it a fact that among all known forms of life including the humans, lifespan of the female exceeds that of the male by a good 5 to 10%? It is not at all difficult to observe such things. Peculiarities like this show up quite frequently in a gender-related way. But we don't see, and also we do not acknowledge the presence of any gender-oriented talent in females. Obviously, that is for spreading the idea of male superiority. As a result of which, we failed to acknowledge or register the lingering discomfort constantly associated with the male. We also overlooked it, while the female continued to enjoy a greater lifespan. Had this not happened, not only that we would have found a direct and conclusive proof of the superiority of females' technique in every aspect of life, but also would have been ready with the reasons. Naturally, further research would have been taking place, bringing this disparity to an end. That is not all, we even try to camouflage this plain and unvarnished reality, by painting it as a proof of the female's aversion to danger. They are less likely to fight, or they follow a less stressful lifestyle. Thereby label all females as lacking in self-confidence and needing outside help for own defense. There is an implied corollary here: all the unprofessional activities that male do for wasting their time, many of them hazardous, is a sign of the male's liking for danger. This, seemingly itself, is untrue. To deny the female any semblance of credit even in instances where the exhibition of caliber cannot be overlooked or overshadowed, we also attribute this to the presence of certain chemicals or compounds found only in the female's body cells. Well, it certainly is a plausible-looking explanation that can put a stop to further studies. As yet another example, note how conspicuous the distinguishing mark of maleness is, even before the proponent of conception begins its routine. As we shall see, right from the stage of a sperm, the males never have the aim in sight. As there are millions of sperms, one among those just happens to hit the bull's-eye and progress the process of reproduction further. In other words, head to toe, the male is non-professional. Thus, the unprofessional nature is clearly identifiable even before the gamete begins its journey to a male. It has been documented that a sperm holding a Y chromosome and one holding an X chromosome, say male sperm and female sperm, as one leads to a male offspring and the other to a female one, behaves differently. The male sperm apparently swims faster but do not survive as long as the female sperm, which lasts many times longer. These papers conclude that, if sperms on their arrival at uterus find a ready egg, fertilization, by the hasty male sperm, can result in a male offspring. Otherwise, if there is no ready egg, female shall be the progeny, as, by the time the egg arrives, all male sperms would have completed their lifetime. This incidentally suggests a rather humane method for guaranteeing a male offspring, which is in great demand in some parts of the world. Ensure fertilization, for example, make love, in the first few minutes right after ovulation. The methods of choosing the sex of the child, which is made possible by the advances in fertility treatments listed on the popular website babycenter.com, takes into account such distinct differences between male and female sperms. http://www.babycenter.com/0_choosing-your-hyphen-babies-sex-what-the-hyphen-say_29155.bc?1-page=sign 1 to 5. Having thus examined the male and female living forms in detail, with special emphasis on observed differences and categorized these changes, we are now in a position to describe the symptom we are after, which also is the most significant difference between male and female, as far as evolution goes. Now we know what constitutes the omnipresent disorder we were after. Male always is tardy, amateurish, and lazy, as though haunted constantly by some lingering thought. Whereas a female, from the very stage of an egg, is punctual, professional and persevering, the obvious signs of contentment. Other than this, no visible or invisible character traits can be identified, specific to either male or female, in any of the activities involved in life and living. However, facts speak otherwise. Clearly noticeable when it comes to human life, it is the amateurish and tardy males that achieve greater heights, always leaving the professional female way behind. Why is that so? And why should the less professional do better in life? To find out, let us study closely all the scenes and performances that constitute the act of life. And towards that, with our focus centered particularly on how differently the male and the female confront these, let us analyze each. Part 2 of this book will examine all forms of life, with the above analysis in mind.